and welcome to another episode of Tête-à-Tête with Inaya. On the show today, I'll be interviewing noted filmmaker, archivist and restorer, Mr. Shivendra Singh Dungarpur. After that, I'll be reviewing one of my favorite books of all time, The Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Finally, I'll be singing a song called The Joker and the Queen, originally performed by Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift. I have with me here Mr. Shivendra Singh Dungarpur. He is a filmmaker, producer, film archivist, and restorer, and an actor. He is best known for his films Celluloid Man, The Immortals, and Checkmate in Search of Yuri Mansoor. He's also directed several award winning campaigns and public service commercials. So, he's the founder, director of the Film Heritage Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to the preservation and restoration of India's film heritage. He's also a member of the Board of Trustees of the Geo Mami Mumbai Festival, an alumni of the prestigious Doon School, St. Stephen's College, and FTII. And if all that wasn't enough, he also belongs to the royal family of the erstwhile Dungarpur estate in Rajasthan. So, sir, thank you so much for joining me on Tête-à-Tête with Inaya.
Thank you. Thank
Truly
you.
humbled to have a person of
No,
your
I mean,
caliber.
you've given a very long introduction, but I'm also proud. And I think the first time somebody of your age and who's also an author, amazing for you to write this book. And I'm
Thank
so
you so
glad you
much.
gave it to me. And, I'm always so happy to get younger people to do a conversation. And I'm as excited as you are to be on this conversation. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, sir. So let's begin with the
Yeah,
interview.
sure.
Sir, you are a film archivist and restorer. So I'm sure many people in the audience don't know what that is. So
Yeah.
what exactly is film restoring and what does it entail?
Well, this is a long story, but let me just take you back. I was very busy making films. I was making ad films. I've shot nearly over 1,000 ad films, and I was making documentaries. And one day in a newspaper, I read an interview of Martin Scorsese, uh, who said about there's a festival in Bologna which they show restored films, and I got very excited. I was at the peak of my career. So my wife said that you're so keen on watching films. I was mad about watching films, right from the Film Institute days. I used to even travel to different cities and try and get a glimpse of films wherever I could do. So I decided to go to Bologna. When I went to Bologna, I was exposed to some of the great classics of the world cinema, and I was seeing them in the restored form. And I was so moved by it, and it immediately made me think, what is really happening to our archive, our heritage, the old films which we've had. P.K. Nair at the Film Archive used to show us classic films like Pyasa, Mother India. But I really didn't know what the state of affairs of these films were. So I wanted to come back to India and try and visit the archive and see what the archive is about now. And at that time, I met people from the Film Foundation, which is the foundation which Mr. Scorsese has founded. And they said, we are looking for a film called Kalpana. And a lot of people who do not know about Kalpana, it is directed by Pandit Uday Shankar, Pandit Ravi Shankar's elder brother, the great sitar player, Ravi Shankar ji, his elder brother, Uday Shankar. And can you believe it, Inaya? Uday Shankar had a school in Himalayas. And you know what it was called? School of Imagination, Kalpana. Nice. Can you imagine? He was such a big dancer. He came back to India, and the first thing he did was to set up a school, which you just had to imagine. The whole day you had to just imagine doing, whether it's dance, anything to do with the cultural heritage of that region and of India. And he set it up in the Himalayas. And when that school shut during independence, he went to Chennai and made this film called Kalpana. And Scorsese was very keen to restore it. Of course, this very school had students like Vilayat Khan, Keluchand Mahapatra, Guru Dutt, You can name the great musicians. They were all part of that school. So I came back to Bombay and I went to Pune, and I myself, though I knew about preservation because I was a collector from childhood. Even if you give me the films I went, I used to collect the tickets. I was fond of collecting posters. I was an avid collector. I used to collect everything. But I was not so deeply into preservation. I didn't know what preservation was in that true sense. I knew that because I come from a heritage which is 1,000 years old, my forefathers and everyone in Dungarpur, but I didn't know the idea of film preservation. So I came back, went to meet P.K. Nair, who had retired outside Pune. We spoke about some things, and he started talking about heritage. And I think that journey of meeting P.K. Nair and my journey to make a film called Celluloid Man, which was almost for me to travel all around the country. It was my satyagraha, like how Gandhiji did the satyagraha. It was my satyagraha. And not many causes, when you do, you actually transform yourself. You support a cause, but you sometimes don't follow that cause. I was deeply, deeply moved. And I never thought Celluloid Man would be a film. I always thought Celluloid Man would just be a way for me to put it out in the public so that there's attention to film preservation comes in. But it went on to be a film. It won national awards. It went to festivals all around. And now my task was to understand what film preservation is. And if you really look at what film preservation is and the restoration is, so even what you're doing now, digital, that also needs to be restored at some point or the other. See, earlier, before the advent of digital, there was a video time where videotapes were there. Before that was the time of celluloid. Films began their journey in 1895 when the Lumiere brothers showed their first film in Paris. Then 1896, the first film was shown in India in Mumbai. So, but the very first film we made in India was 1913. And you can imagine that it's almost over 100 years journey in India on. And most of the journey was on celluloid, film reels. Have you seen a film reel?
No,
I wish I can show you a film reel. If I can show you a film reel, I would try and find you, and if you can do that, because film reel is actually a reel which goes inside a film camera and you expose it. It runs on a 24 frames per second, and that particular power of that particular image is about 24K. Right now you're still on 4K. So you haven't even reached that stage of 24K. But if you do not keep it in a proper condition, if you do not keep it in air conditioning and humidifier, the chances of that deteriorating is very fast. So we needed to digitize all that material. All the great old films, whether it's Mother India, Pyasa, films of Devanand, Dilip Kumar, Amitabh Bachchan, any of the great artists, not only in Mumbai, but if you look at in the Telugu industry, or whether it's Rajnikant's early film, Kamal Hassan's early film. But the issue was not just preserving that. The issue was also what we are producing now. Do you know that even today, there is a thing called digital dilemma? We are shooting so much on digital, but we have no accurate procedure to preserve it. So what is today is something which the future generation is going to look at and say, wow, this is what happened in this time. It's a record of our times. It's a record of history. It's a record of who we are. And unless we know where we came from, we will not be able to go ahead. Right? So if we can preserve things in a museum, which is what, if you go to a museum here, you see a stone from the Harappan civilization, and everybody surrounds it and says, wow, look at the stone. But in films, we are there. So we need to preserve that. We need to preserve. I need to know how my forefathers did what they did. And films mean not just feature films, not just Bollywood films, or not just Telugu films. I mean the entire gambit of audiovisual heritage. So when we did the Olympics event right now, we were preserving Indians in Olympics over the years. So that is important to understand, that preservation means preserving whether it's the past or the present. Restoration means the early films of the film reels, we digitize it to what is today, the digital format, or the tapes, or that, or what is present. We are further making it available in different forms because, the market is such. Which iPhone is selling now?
I don't use
15,
iPhone.
15, 15, right? iPhone 15.
Yeah.
Last year was 14, 13. The market is constantly making you buy things and change. And what they're saying is what is earlier is not adaptable to this part. So how do we as archivists and preservers, how do we want to keep your memories alive? The videos your parents took when you were a child, how do they keep upgrading that? That is also restoration, part of restoration.
Yeah.
So it's not just film reels, it's what's happening today.
Yeah, so I relate what you said to these YouTube videos I used to see some time ago.
Yeah.
They're basically old paintings which, a person used to restore, refurbish, they used
Yeah.
to scrub it
Yeah.
with some ointments and
Yeah,
some
yeah.
stuff. So I was fascinated by that as well. So I connected what you said
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
something like
I
that.
mean, I'll give you one very interesting example, and I think a lot of viewers will get it. Many years ago, I read about a marble which had fallen off the Taj from one of the minarets. You know what they did? They went to the market outside and they got a better marble and put it there, right? So when everybody was walking in, they were saying, why is this looking different than the other? Till the world community went and said, please go back to the place where Shah Jahan would have actually got the Markhana, which is the marble which is used everywhere from Rajasthan. Go and get it from there. So they went to that very site where they got the marble and they put it back onto the minaret, and then you could make out the difference.
Yeah.
That is restoration. The restoration is all about keeping the artist's vision. Like the book you've written today, it's in a book form, and I'm so glad you've done that. I'm so proud that a 17-year-old girl has written a
14.
book. 14? You're 14?
Yes.
My God, 14 with your mind? That's amazing.
Thank you.
So the fact that a 14-year-old girl has written this book, I'm so proud of that. I'm going to read it. But having said that, today, how would you preserve it? You'll preserve the digital copies, you will archive it. The future generation may have a different form of what will be available to them. So we got to look at what the past is, what the present is, and what the future is. And that is what makes the archiving so challenging, so difficult, and so exciting at the same time.
So, sir, you mentioned earlier that Celluloid Man was your first film, your first documentary, and it was about P.K. Nair, the film archivist.
Yeah.
So, tell us something more about him and your interactions with
Oh,
him.
when I was studying at the Film Institute and I was a student, we were so scared of him. He was such a towering figure. And just the other day, we were launching Vinod Chopra's films, and everybody was there. Kamal Hassan, Nasiruddin Shah, Vinod Chopra, Rajkumar Hirani, myself. And all of us were remembering P.K. Nair. So you can imagine his contribution. Those are the days when you could not download a film or you could not just Google a film. You had to physically go and see the film. And he single-handedly built the National Film Archive. That means collecting film reels by reels, convincing people. And he was almost like the godfather of Indian cinema. Because what he did, he contributed by not only collecting, but showcasing it to the youngsters. Can you imagine at that time, I used to take a train to desperately try and get into seeing these films because there was no other way. And we knew that once he shows it to us, I don't know when we'll see it again. Now, because it's all available, people don't watch. But that time it was crazy. And all the great filmmakers, many of them who are now very prominent, whether you talk about Sriram Raghavan, Rajkumar Hirani, Sanjay Bansali, Vinod Chopra, Saeed Mirza, Kamal Hassan was talking about how he used to borrow films and show it to Mani Ratnam and P.C. Sriram. I think they all owe a large part of the career, and especially the Indian New Wave, to P.K. Nair. So when I went back to him in the institute, when he had retired, and he was just staying, when I was in Bologna, and I said I went back. I was almost like I'm going to my guru in many ways, when he didn't know me that well.
Yeah.
Because in the institute, I mean, we were so scared of him. And I think when I started talking to him that I want to shoot something, he said the film can't be about me. It can be about the cause. And I kept lying to him all through when I was shooting. Once I shot with him a little bit, and I was shooting on film on 16mm. So he said, "Didn't you shoot with me last time?" I said, "Sir, what happened? I took it to the lab, and it's not really, because film, you have to process it.
Yeah.
And you have to take it out. It's not like digital, which is instant, which is there. And that's the fun of film." And he said, "Okay, but this is the only time, not next time." And like that, I shot 6, 7 times for him. I had to put excuses. And when he saw the film, and when he came for the final, we were in ad labs in the Film City, and I kept the screening. He was so emotional, because I think he was what, without him realizing it, he was the person who gave us the meaning of not only cinema, because it's very important to understand that had he not shown us films of Godard and Ozu and Kurosawa and all the films from South America, or the Russian films, to any of us, I don't think we would have become better filmmakers, or we would have understood filmmaking. But he made me realize how important heritage is, how important it is to preserve for the future generations. Because what we have today, the future generations can see the entire process or the history of film or filmmaking in India.
I get that, sir.
Yeah.
So, like PK Nair, sir, you've also worked with Martin Scorsese. So, tell us something more about working with a
Well,
legend like him.
Yeah. So Martin Scorsese is when somebody asked him in an interview recently that how much do you value, or what do you value the most? You made these iconic films, and great films, and but what do you value the most? And he turned around and he said, "I value preservation the most, or the restoration the most, more than my filmmaking." And I think that's what speaks about Scorsese. He was the man who influenced me to set up the foundation. So we set up the foundation, which is the Film Heritage Foundation. And it's his foundation which is so wonderfully, whether it's Margaret Body or Jennifer Aniston or Chris Marola. These are people from her foundation, from his foundation, who've supported all our workshops over the years. We've partnered on restorations of whether it was Kalpana, whether it was Kumati, Thump, and it's just an amazing partnership. It's difficult to describe it, but they've been a really big supporter. They've supported our workshops. They've supported restorations. We're going to get into another restoration together, which is very exciting. But obviously, as a filmmaker, he's one of the greatest filmmakers. And what is great about him is that his knowledge and in-depth knowledge on filmmaking. And even at the age of 80, he's making his present film, which was in Cannes, which is all over. So he's evolving all the time, and he's able to with his filmmaking, able to not only evolve but to keep the younger and the older generation together. And that's not very easy. That's very challenging, and it's just been amazing. Yeah.
Nice, good knowing about such legends.
Oh yeah, he's my hero. I've got few heroes, but for me, Martin Scorsese is a great inspiration on many things. Yeah.
So, sir, you've also founded the Film Heritage Foundation. So, what are its work and goals? What exactly does it do?
So we set up the Film Heritage Foundation in 2014, and exactly on the parameters of how Scorsese set up the Film Foundation. And I think it was Mrs. Bachchan and who was instrumental in encouraging me, saying that you must set up a foundation. You must do more than that. And I didn't know that time that it would be such a mammoth task, because in India, you're making films in 55 languages and almost 9 to 10 film industries. And then Mr. Bachchan became our brand ambassador, And then we have an advisory board of Kamal Hassan, Shyam Benegal, Gulzar Saab, who's my guru. So Gulzar Saab is my guru, who I came to Bombay for the first time and worked with him on Lekin and other films. So with such eminent people on the board, advisory board, I think the key to Film Heritage Foundation is to preserve our cinematic heritage, preserve its basic core of audiovisual heritage.
Yes.
And that is the key. And to do workshops, to train archivists, to do children's program through educational means. We have got 2 programs on children, Do You Speak Cinema, and we try and reach different schools, different cities, different places, but we don't limit our work only to India. We work very closely in other parts of Asia, and this workshop which you're seeing is in collaboration with FIAF, and we are almost 25 countries are participating. We've got 14 countries from Africa. So that's quite challenging, that the role of Film Heritage Foundation is not limited to just preserving in India. We also restore, we publish books, and we do big retrospectives. Bachchan Back to the Beginning we did then Dilip Saab's 100 years, and we just had concluded with Devanand's 100 years, and we do Vinod Chopra's films. We just put it out recently. So we do these big retrospectives. We also do restorations, which is one of our things. But the key to the Film Heritage Foundation is preservation, public access, and making it available for the younger generation. And what we are getting is a lot of younger generation following Film Heritage Foundation because of the designs we do. We try and keep it very contemporary, very cool, and finding captions of titles which could be catchy for the younger generation.
All right, sir. Everything you've told me so far has been fascinating, honestly. I never really considered it in such depth, restoring and archiving.
Yeah.
So, sir, give us an example, like a hands-on example of, going around flea markets and chor bazaars and collecting lost films.
Oh yeah, you see, when you're trained as a filmmaker, you're always on your feet, right? As a filmmaker, you're used to getting up early morning, going somewhere, doing your recce, going for a shoot, handling actors. People ask me, what is the hallmark of a great director? So everybody thinks it's all about in front of the camera. Do you realize there are 100 people behind the camera you have to manage? So a film director is one who manages not only in front of the camera, but manages behind. Behind you never see. All the chaos you never see.
Yeah.
And I think that aspect trained me up, what was behind the camera. And I always try and look to find myself, to look for films which are lost. Traveling to not only different regions, but different parts, different cities. It excites me if I get to know that this particular film is lying here or lying there, or there's a possibility of an old camera or a poster or a lobby card, photographs, costumes. Then I just go berserk. I just try and find. And we found films, like there was a Guru Dutt film which we found in a kind of a dustbin kind of a thing, thrown. It was a film called Bharosa. It was the original negative. And I want to just tell you, for a lot of viewers to understand, what is an original negative? Original negative is the negative which goes into the camera.
Yeah.
And that is the most precious form of restoration. So if you have the original camera negative, you can restore beautifully. It's almost like having the original files with you, the high resolution files. And there was another place which I was shocked to see in Bombay, in almost close to Dadar, where I found a whole community built their houses on film cans, and they use. Do you know that silver is extracted from black and white films, and why we lost so many of our films? So we've lost nearly 99% of our silent films because all the black and white films have a lot of silver nitrate in it. So when the producers would think that the film they've got many prints or they don't need it, they used to send it for silver extraction. And 50 films, which will give you only half a kg of silver. And the color films went for color bangles. So lots of people I used to see, I had that when I used to go around, I used to look at the bangles and I'd say, oh, which film is this? So it used to be exciting. But yeah, that's what we have lost. I mean, we have lost tremendous amount, and I continue to search, I continue to look, I continue to save. It's my everyday life is to save every bit of our film heritage, and I feel very happy doing that. I feel very proud doing that, and like I said, we don't limit it ourselves to just feature films, documentaries, home movies. The other day, somebody walked in and said, "We've got a home movies of K.L. Sehgal. These are his early films, which K.L. Sehgal shot." So it's so exciting to just to discover, to find what could be in that footage, because you almost transported to the 1930s, 40s, the time which K.L. Sehgal was reigning over the whole film industry. And because I'm a big Sehgal fan.
My mom is as
You
well.
really?
Yeah.
I'm a big Sehgal fan. And in fact, my favorite film is President, Ek Bangla Bane Nyara. I hear the song whenever I feel depressed. Of course, my nephews and kids, they run away when they hear him singing because he had a name. But we have his harmonium preserved with us. We also have a lot of documents. So when he shifted from Calcutta and he came to Bombay and he started working at Ranjit Studios, so we have some documents of that. So Sehgal was a huge figure. But to discover his movies which he shot, so we got his original 8mm camera. 8mm camera is back in fashion like Polaroid, and I still shoot in Polaroid. 8mm is like home movies, like how you shoot on digital. It's huge. Everybody's shooting on 8mm. If you go to States, you can get 8mm film, and it's really cool. Now all the apps on phone have a Super 8 or 8mm app, and it gives you that kind of feeling. And we all grew in that generation where our fathers would shoot 8mm, and would be, I used to see my father sitting in his living room and splicing tapes, and I think that was also one of the reasons why I got interested in filmmaking, because I used to see my father with this Super 8 mm. So yeah, so that's how we get films. We get films from anywhere. We just get the smell. We're like those dogs who know where the films are, and the moment you know, then I pester people off to give off their stuff because many of them just hoarding it. They don't do anything. And films, like I said, if they're not preserved properly, there's a tendency that they'll get deteriorated. You need to keep them in the condition. Otherwise, they'll last for 500 years, the condition. While digital, you keep anything on a hard drive. Remember, all your material, hard drive is the most unsafe. The longevity of a hard drive is 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I have experienced that.
Yeah, so you need to keep it on a thing called LTO.
Yeah.
It's not very expensive. It's about 5,000 rupees. But LTO is called linear tape open.
Yeah.
And if you keep it in that, your files can be easily transported, and plus it can be saved for longer.
I wish I'd known that, because while I was writing the manuscript of my book, I was in the editing process of it, and it was, I think, stored on the hard drive or something similar.
Yeah.
And one day when I just finished the editing, the whole thing got corrupted and I lost the entire manuscript.
Yeah, so that's what people do not realize, how unsafe digital is. While celluloid, once it's shot, it remains there. If you preserve celluloid, then it's there. It doesn't go away. So today also we can scan an 1896 film and watch it. You need a scanner for that. I mean, the scanning is not what you Xerox it or what you scan documents with, but it's a high-end scanners which you get.
So, sir, everything you've told me about film archiving and restoring, it's been about preserving the past in the present and for the future generations. So, sir, how do you think the digital age today has helped the distribution of old films?
Massively, because see, even when we restore, we do repair the film, but the restoration process, we use a scanning machine, then we do digital cleanup, all the scratches, all the spots, all the things. We don't do cleanup of the actresses, which all the actresses are doing. So we don't do that. But we certainly try and keep the aesthetics of what the filmmaker had intended the film to be. So we try and bring it as close to what the film is. That couldn't have been possible without digital. The 4K restoration today is because of digital. Also, digital has helped us to reach to many people. You see the digital revolution. How many filmmakers, when I wanted to get into films, it was just virtually impossible. Telling my parents, today my mother came for the first time after all these years. She came today and I put out a picture to everyone that my mom is here finally, because she was never convinced on what I was doing.
Yeah.
She used to feel I'm wasting my time, I'm doing this. Uh, so I think the digital revolution which has happened is almost enhanced the process of restoration, is given restoration the possibility to not only restore the celluloid material, but to take it all around the world. And the accessibility it is given. And it's very important. But we got to use it in the correct form. The problem is when it's not used in the way it's intended to use. You know, and I'm a big believer that while the digital revolution is helped, we've got to keep showing the original way of looking at things. So show films on celluloid, show the way the past is, because that is a different age, and this is a different age. They're two totally different. But definitely the digital age is we don't know what the new age will be after that, or what things will evolve in that. So hopefully things of digital age will be preserved, or we'll find an answer how to preserve digital. Right now we are in a thing called digital dilemma.
So, sir, just like I have been completely fascinated by everything you've been saying, I'm sure the audience was also interested in
I hope
whatever
so, yeah. And
you
I'm
said.
happy to answer any questions if they routed through you, or
Alright,
they
sir.
asked you any questions. I'll be very delighted to answer. Yeah.
Okay. So, sir, how do school children and schools get involved with restoring and archiving, and what are the opportunities that they can access?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. We run a program called Do You Speak Cinema?
Okay.
And that's almost we've been doing it in different parts of the country, and we've had workshops in Delhi and in Mumbai. Delhi, we've had it at the IIC, and we were in touch with Intac, which is right around the corner.
Yeah.
And in Mumbai, we've been doing it at various places, with the British Council, with other schools. But we also look at schools in Rajasthan. We went because I come from that region. I was going to schools, and we've made a module along with Iravati Harshe, who's the actor, she's an award-winning actor, and she's worked on this module, which almost takes kids from the age of 6 to 12, the journey of not only to be discerning students, to really understand the importance of an image and how to look at image, and not get carried away with an image, because finally we believe that the image is so powerful, or the visual is so powerful, that you don't need an audio. Your visual should be able to interpret it, or you should be able to see. So it doesn't matter what language you're seeing, but the visual should be so powerful that you're able to interpret what that visual is saying. And we do take those programs to the children, right from teaching them the history of cinema. We show them celluloid, we show them 16 projectors, we get them to project.
Yeah.
We also give them empty frames so they can draw in that, and we can project it, because a moving image is made of many frames. It's 24 frames per second.
Yeah.
And we want people to go through that journey. So I think it's important to understand that aspect for kids, that they can have a choice. And that's what we try and do, and reach out to a lot of children. In fact, when we tied up with the Olympic Museum, and before today's papers had the Prime Minister announcing that India is going to pitch for 2036 Olympics, we did a whole program in Bombay and Delhi, almost for 14 days, showcasing children. So there were about 450 children in Bombay, and about over 600 children in Delhi who came to watch the screenings. And to see, and a quick example I'll give you, Zafar Iqbal, who was a former hockey captain, had come there, and he had gone to the Moscow Olympics, which India won the gold.
Yeah.
And he said, when I came back, I met my children at the airport, and they were asking me what happened. And he says, I didn't have a video. Us waqt video nahi tha. There was no coverage. So what he did was, he asked them to give him a piece of paper, and he started drawing how he scored the goals or what it meant for him, and he started explaining. And when he came that day, he was absolutely emotional, because we were showing footage of the Moscow Olympics for the first time. Or Milka Singh's daughter, she was there, Sonia, and she was crying. And I'll tell you a reason. Farhan Akhtar called me one day, and he said, Shivi, I have got these films of Milkha Singh. Jeev Milkha and his daughter and his sister Sonia have these 8 films of their father, but they've never seen it. This is after Milkha Singh ji died, and I said, send it to me. We digitized the film. It has them as small kids in London, and Milkha ji is playing with them, holding them, and all that. I, of course, did not realize the impact. I knew it was important. I sent the films back to Sonia. I get a call moment they saw it, almost in tears, said, I never knew my father ever held me. She said, it changed my perception of my father. And that is the power of the image and the visual. And what it does, and I keep telling you, or telling everyone else also, that the Film Heritage Foundation is preserving, is restoring, is doing all this. But what we do the most is emotion. And that is the most important thing for human race, is we bring back emotions into you. We bring back that feeling of who you are. And I think unless we have that, and we are able to generate that, we'll not go ahead. So we are very proud of bringing that emotion. It's emotional for me to talk to you. It's emotional, those images. And it was emotional to see Sonia. So the children get to see that. They get to see Milkha before the race.
Yeah.
Everybody is seen on YouTube, Milkha running. That doesn't get emotion, no. But when you see Milkha before the race, his temperament, his nervousness, his whole thing, and then you see him after the race, what happened, that footage, then you get into the mind of the person. And that's what visual history is. That's what films are. Films are all about the mind and the human race. And we need to keep that connected. And we just preserve that for you. You just come and discover it with us. That's all we do. Nothing else.
So, sir, that was certainly a very emotional interview. I resonated with it. I'm sure the audience resonated with it. Again, thank you so much for joining me for this episode.
Thank you. And all the best. And wonderful to be here. And I really enjoyed my interaction. Thank you. Bye-bye.
What an insightful interview. I learned so much about film archiving and restoration. I mean, it was truly fascinating. And speaking of fascinating, it's now time for me to review one of my favorite books. So now it's time for my next segment, Inaya Reviews. And today I'll be reviewing the book, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So this is the Hunger Games prequel, and I read this book at the start of the year, and honestly, it's such a good book. It's a good fat book, and I enjoyed every page of the book. And the movie for the same's coming out in about November, and I don't know about everyone else, but I'm super excited to go and see the movie in the theaters. So basically, this book is set at the time of the 10th Hunger Games. The original series, Katniss's Hunger Games, are the 74th Hunger Games. So about 64 years have passed in between the main series and this. So one thing about this book, the prequel, is it shows the evolution of the games from the 10th Hunger Games to the 74th Hunger Games. So although it is quite a barbaric activity, the Hunger Games in itself, it really shows how the games have evolved in terms of housing the tributes. As in initially in the 74th games, Katniss's games, the tributes before the games are given luxury. They are transported in luxurious trains. They live in penthouses, for crying out loud. And they eat good food. They're well clothed, and they have tribute interviews where they're glamorized as much as possible. And the 10th Hunger Games, the tributes are basically treated like vermin. They are transported in these bulky vehicles. They stay in zoos. They're kept at zoos, and they're treated like animals. People come to watch them like animals. And so all of this, in the broader aspect, it reflects on how the games have evolved. And for the viewers who are watching the games, it really shows how the capital works, and how they evolve the game just so that the audience would watch it and they'd be able to maintain these games that they've started. Now, the second thing I liked about the book was the protagonist, Coriolanus Snow. I mean, President Snow The antagonist of the main series, who's caused the death of so many people, he's the protagonist of this book. I mean, when I started reading the book, I was expecting some, evil mastermind who's talking about how he's gonna be evil and rule the world. But I was completely surprised because Coriolanus Snow was like any normal protagonist you would read in any, random book. So, like, what are the qualities of a protagonist? A protagonist is someone who's brave, someone who's selfless, and works for the greater good. And that's not exactly what Coriolanus is, but he still works towards providing for his families. And you think that in the main series, you think Coriolanus is someone who grew up in riches. He had everything, all the facilities of the capital at his disposal. But actually, in the first page of the book, you see that he grew up in a poor family, as in the Snow family was earlier, it had lots of grandeur, they lived in a penthouse. But now, after the Great War, which caused the Hunger Games, his family was also rendered poor, and he's had to build himself up from the start, and he's struggled a lot. So that is one aspect that makes at least me as a reader really relate to Coriolanus. And I felt achieving that as an author was like, I hats off to Suzanne Collins. But obviously, there were some parts in the series which reminded me that Coriolanus was eventually going to become the president who was going to cause the death of so many people. But Suzanne Collins' writing was scary good, the way it connected, Coriolanus in the past and then Coriolanus in the future. And then the last aspect of the book, which I liked a lot, was how it brought certain elements from the main series, which we weren't given, an insight into earlier. Now it talks about that in this series, as in the song "The Hanging Tree." As in, it's a very important part of the main series. It's an important symbol of the rebellion. But in this book, we're actually given an insight into how it evolved, why it was written, who wrote it, and honestly, that for me was the cherry on top of this amazing book. And I'd recommend it to all those who haven't read it. Go read it right now. I mean, well, not right now, because there's still another segment remaining in my show. Stay tuned in. Music is one of my go-to hobbies. So now I'm going to perform the song "The Joker and the Queen," originally performed by Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran. How was I to know? It's a crazy thing. I showed you my hand, you still let me in. And who was I to say this was meant to be? The road that was broken brought us together, and I know you could fall for 1,000 kings and hearts that would give you a diamond ring when I fall. You see the best in me, the Joker and the Queen. I've been played before, if you hadn't guessed. So I kept my cards close to my full confess. But you called my bluff, saw through all my tells, and then you went all in, and we left together. And I know you think that what makes a king is gold, a palace and diamond ring. When I fall, you see the best in me, the Joker and the Queen, the Joker and the Queen. And that's all I have for you today on this episode of Tête-à-Tête with Inaya. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another episode very soon.